This is a book review for my environmental science class. Um, for this book review, I chose this book, Sand County Almanac. It's by Aldo Leopold, and I picked this book because it seemed pretty interesting, and it's by Aldo Leopold, who is actually from Wisconsin. He's a professor at UW-Madison. He was a professor at UW-Madison. Um, and really, this book is kind of just comprised of, um, well, the first part of this book is kind of comprised of like a lot of experiences that Aldo Leopold had um, at his farm in Sauk County, Wisconsin, and that's pretty interesting. The book kind of has this very poetic kind of tone to it, um, very artistic, and I think that um, can kind of make it a bit difficult to get into if you're not really into the um, kind of nature conservation type thing. But other than that, I mean, it's a pretty good book. It's really interesting and it has a lot of pictures in it, which I liked. So there's a lot of stuff in here. He kind of goes through and talks about his experiences from, you know, from different points in the year, from the different months. And I suppose I'll just talk about the things that kind of resonated with me in this book. And the first thing would probably be from February here. And he, in this chapter, he kind of talks about like, uh, the pros of owning a farm, and he says that people who don't own a farm are at risk of what he calls spiritual dangers, which means like things like heat and food. He's very grateful for because he has to work for it, and I think one of his main points in this kind of chapter or in this month is to kind of say when you work for your heat and your food, you hunt for your food, you become more grateful for that opposed to just kind of going to a store and getting your food, or going to buying your heat from a utility company. Um, so that was kind of interesting to me. And he also, in this chapter, kind of talks about how when he's getting his wood for his heat, he talks about cutting down this big oak tree, and he kind of like mentions the rings of the oak tree, and he kind of tells that you can kind of tell from the rings, um, how old the tree is. So he kind of goes through and follows the different time periods that this tree has kind of been through. Um, and then we have March, which he talks a lot about geese. The geese return. Um, he kind of touches on like the migration of the geese and how they kind of travel through these different ecosystems when they migrate. He says that he kind of admires the geese because of their unity and their ability to kind of work together and work through different ecosystems. And he makes a point to talk about how in nature, creatures like the geese, they almost have more unity than humans, because he says that humans really didn't discover unity until the Claro Conference, with the Allied powers in 1943 during World War II. Um, so that was pretty interesting. And then he goes on to uh, another chapter that kind of resonated with me here is um, April. He talks about the bur oak um, of Wisconsin, and he kind of talks about how the bur oak has this, due to evolution, it has this sort of natural armor um, that it kind of developed this natural armor to combat prairie fires so that it could survive prairie fires. And he kind of likens the um, battle between the bur oak and the prairie to like a war, like he almost personifies it to like a war between humans. Um, and then he goes on to explain that like humans kind of like plowed these fields so that um, there's not as much prairie fires. So all these years of evolution, and then humans just come along and they kind of have this drastic effect on nature, where it's like now this tree is just left with this armor kind of. Um, and then in April, he talks about the sky dance. He says that he gets his he gets his he doesn't get his entertainment from media. He really just gets it from nature, and what he calls the sky dance is this kind of thing that he likes watching, where male woodcocks, they dance around. They do this little dance when they're looking for mates, and you can actually find the dance. This kind of bird woodcock dance on YouTube. I looked at it because I wanted to see what it looked like, and it's pretty cool. Um, yeah, so another big thing that he talks about, like one of the in one of the last chapters here, like, and I'd say this is kind of one of the more defining things about this book, is that he talks about this thing called a land ethic, and yeah, it's kind of one of the most important things in this book. He kind of talks about how he takes a kind of less like anthropocentric view when he's talking about his relationship to um, the land and stuff like that. He says that he kind of sees himself as a part of the land opposed to someone who's above the land. Um, and he says that if we kind of adapt like this land ethic where we have this sort of sentimentality towards nature, then that can kind of change our relationship um, with the land. Um, so, like, if we view it kind of, uh, being ourselves as humans as a part of the land instead of being something that is above the land or superior to the land, he says that um, can make a big difference. And he talks about kind of also how, like, a lot of people who participate in environmental conservation are basically just doing it for their own economic profit, which actually made a lot of sense. Um, because it's like they kind of just participate in the environmental conservation type thing for their own profit, and then as soon as they realize that they can't make a profit off of it, then they kind of just throw caution into the wind. Um, he says that like one of the big reasons why we don't appreciate nature is also because of our limited involvement with it. Um, but yeah, so I think the big takeaway from this book is like I thought the book was really good, and I thought that he kind of reached his target audience in the sense that like I think this book was kind of aimed towards people who aren't conservationists, and I think he does a really good job at like talking to people who are not conservationists and kind of um, talking to them in like a non-condescending tone. Like he's not really pretentious about anything. He's just kind of stating his own opinions, and like, he's kind of staying uh, out of your hair with it. But it is a nice uh, book, and I do recommend it to people who don't know a lot of stuff about environmental conservation. I think this is like a good um, kind of stepping stone into that sort of thing, especially with like a lot of people in the media. I think it talks about this too in the book. A lot of people in the media who are kind of like forcing this idea on you, and he doesn't really do that. So that's another reason why I really like this book. But yeah, so Sand County Almanac, check it out if you want or don't. Um, but yeah, all right, thank you.